All right, so it is 12 o'clock. We are delighted to have another webinars for busy lawyers through Mass LoMAP. My name is Laura. I will be your moderator today. I want to welcome and thank you so much for turning into this session of webinar for busy lawyers. These webinars are designed to bring you practical information in just 20 to 30 minutes. And by practical, we mean that you can implement what you learn here in your practice immediately. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Susan Smith Blakely, who will be a speaker today on what millennial lawyers want. And so I will have the pleasure of telling you a little bit about Susan Blakely Smith. She is a lawyer, author, and motivational speaker. After 25 years as a practicing attorney with experience in both the private and public sectors, Ms. Blakely retired as a law firm partner in 2006 to pursue writing, speaking, and consulting on topics related to women lawyers through her company, Legal Perspectives, LLC. As a practicing lawyer, public sector chief of staff, and more recently a business entrepreneur, she understands the challenges of both law and business. She has written several books, and more information can be found both on the LoMAP page about this webinar and on her website, Best Friends at the Bar. So before I turn it over to Susan Smith Blakely, I'd like to let you know that we will have time at the end to take questions from attendees. Please put any questions you have in the chat box, and I will relay those directly to our speaker at the very end. Susan Smith Blakely, thank you so much for being with us today, and please take it away.
Thank you very much, Laura. And I'd like to have slide 1 up at this time. And welcome to all of the webinar participants. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for being with us. My subject today is millennial lawyers, and my remarks are based on the research from my most recent book, What Millennial Lawyers Want, A Bridge from the Past to the Future of Law Practice, which was released in the fall of 2018. My prior 3 books were for women lawyers, but when the millennials came on the scene, I saw a great need to talk about them. That book, slide 2, please, Laura, thank you. That book serves 2 constituencies. It validates millennial lawyers, and it helps them understand their challenges and how to overcome those challenges. And it encourages them to hold true to their values. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. And it encourages law firm leaders to appreciate millennial lawyers and their values, and to help millennial lawyers become true leaders within the profession. At a launch party for that most recent book, I was asked to describe 2 images that I might put on Instagram to capture messages about millennial lawyers. Now, I want you to know that presumes I would know how to put anything on Instagram, which I have to confess, I probably don't. The first image I described was a group of young lawyers running hectically outdoors while swatting at paper bills falling from the sky and shouting, "We want work-life balance. We want respect. We want mentoring." And the second image was a group of young lawyers socializing in a large room with high ceilings and pillars. Think of an elegant hotel lobby. And peeking out from behind each pillar is a senior lawyer looking furtive, not wanting to engage or interact with the young people. Now hold on to those images because we will come back to them a little later. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about the generation divide. Slide 3, please. The law profession is currently in transition in so many ways, and I know you know that. Those ways are fueled by new technologies, the complications of a global economy, and the challenges of the pandemic. And one of the most significant aspects of those challenges is how we value human capital within these new realities. Millennial lawyers are front and center in that discussion. As a group, they have values and workplace expectations that are different from senior lawyers, and they are not willing to sacrifice those values on the altar of what they see as negative law firm cultures. And law firm leaders find that very hard to accept. I hear it from both sides, from my former colleagues in the old guard and from the millennial lawyers who I consult to and who also are my children. Everybody complains. It is a challenging time, and we need a new collective way of thinking that respects the success of senior lawyers and the positive values of the newcomers. In addressing that problem and what seemed like a very heavy lift several years ago, I discovered a historical precedent, I guess I should say, that both sides could respect, I believe. I discuss it in my book, and I want to share it with you here today. That precedent was part of my life growing up in mid-century America, when I was fortunate to observe the positive values of lawyers like my dad, up close and personal. Now, you may not think that millennial lawyers possibly could have anything in common with my dad, but I think I can convince you otherwise. Lawyers, slide 4, please. Lawyers like my father were members of what has come to be known as the greatest generation. Many of them, like him, returned from a long and dreadful war in Europe to take the legal profession to new heights. They were not just appreciated for their legal skills. They also were appreciated for their professionalism and their positive values. Slide 5. They valued respect for themselves, for colleagues, and for clients. They valued honor and ethical behavior. They valued service to the needy and the underprivileged and improving their communities. They collaborated as team members without undercutting colleagues. And the more experienced lawyers mentored those who were coming up in the ranks to develop them as valuable members of the bar. And they fiercely protected time spent with their family and friends. Those lawyers lived their values in the same way that millennial lawyers hold true to their values today. So I submit to you that there is an important values connection between the greatest generation lawyers and millennial lawyers, a connection that can benefit both of the millennial lawyers and their leaders. But millennials need more facts to make that case stick and to avoid the negative perceptions that surround their generation of lawyers. Slide 6, please. So the problem is that those negative perceptions include that millennial lawyers are lazy, self-absorbed, ultra-sensitive children who don't want to work hard, consider themselves to be entitled, and expect everything to be handed to them. Maybe you've heard it before. Well, I don't believe that, and neither should you. Slide 7, please. But too many senior lawyers, baby boomers like me, and Gen X lawyers do believe it. They are perplexed by millennial lawyers and reluctant to engage them in meaningful ways and take them seriously. They need compelling facts about the millennial generation to bring them to a true understanding of millennial lawyers. So let's get some of those facts. Slide 8, please. The millennial generation is roughly defined as persons born between 1980 and 2000. You'll see it a little bit different here and there, but that's generally true. And I don't often read directly from my slides, but this one's important. Millennials are the most diverse generation in US history. They are the largest generation since baby boomers. They outnumber Generation X by nearly 3-1. Millennials will make up nearly 75% of the workforce by 2030, a mere 10 years from now. And between 20 and 25% of practicing lawyers today are millennials. We also know that millennials have different attitudes about the role of work in their lives, and they aspire to be different from their parents' generation for some very good reasons. Slide 9. Those reasons revolve around how millennials were raised and the social influences that helped shape them. Helicopter parents raised them. Their parents hovered endlessly and were the source of never-ending praise and constant attention. They made all the decisions for their children, denying them the benefit of bad choices, lessons learned, and what it means to take a risk. Parents controlled their children's social lives and sheltered them from failure. They made sure their children all got trophies, and they interfered with coaches and teachers to advocate for more playing time and better grades. And they allowed their children to spend so much time with social media that those children were not comfortable with face-to-face communication and defined social skills as being liked on Facebook. And then, after all of that hovering and nurturing, parents were hands-off, and millennials were thrown into work environments where they are ignored and isolated with very little attention paid to them. And as you might expect, the millennial generation is generally unsatisfied with traditional workplaces and is looking for workplace experiences that are more consistent with the comfort levels of their childhoods. Slide 10, please. And that's the research on millennials in general. And the research on millennial lawyers is even more enlightening. Many millennial lawyers are the children of at least one lawyer or have lawyers in their families. Too many of those lawyer parents were workaholics who left early in the morning, came home late at night, and went to the office on the weekends, most weekends. Many of those workaholic lawyer parents suffered from health problems related to the stresses of law practice, like alcohol and drug addiction, and many of the marriages of those workaholic parents ended in divorce. Those are painful memories for many millennial lawyers, as you might expect. And they are looking for workplaces with different values and different expectations to help them avoid repeating those mistakes. So we must ask, what specific workplace experiences and values attract millennial lawyers and make them want to stay? Slide 11, please. The research about millennial lawyers by millennial lawyers, in their own words, tells us a lot about that. They want mentors to guide them and help them improve their skills and advance their careers. They want collegiality and collaboration in lieu of being isolated and ignored. They want respect for their opinions and values. They want regular feedback on their work, not just once a year in an associate review. They want purpose in their work, which translates to improving communities and making a difference, which often is found in pro bono work. They want transparency and meaning in their work and to be involved in projects, not just simply following directions. They want clarity about their work and managers who are accessible and available to answer their questions. They want professional development opportunities and more client contact. They want time with families and friends. Yes, they want to work hard, but they don't want to work all of the time and all of the time at the office. They want flexible work arrangements. The millennial generation is very tech savvy, and they understand that technology makes it possible to work anywhere with a Wi-Fi connection, And we sure know that's true during the pandemic. And they want workplaces where ethical and honorable behavior is the rule and not the exception. Slide 12, please. They also know, we also know from the research, that millennial lawyers are less interested in big homes, expensive cars, private clubs, huge salaries, and law firm social events. Remember the image of the millennials swatting the paper money away? It is not that they don't want good salaries, especially those with huge student loan debt, but they are more interested in quality of life than material possessions. What millennial lawyers value is a different approach than the greed and the power and the worship of the billable hour, which have come to define too many current law firm cultures. It is a different approach than the lawyers we read about in the newspapers and hear about in the media far too often, who have crossed over lines from positive principles and values and ended up on the wrong side of the law. Slide 13, please. So here's the dilemma. We are faced with a dilemma that we must course correct if the law profession is going to appeal to the huge number of millennial lawyers in our midst today. We need to change cultures, but that is not easy. And here I'm talking directly to the law firm leaders. In many law firm cultures today, entry-level lawyers are functioning as clerks and made to feel like commodities. Young lawyers are ignored and left to fend for themselves, and associates, senior associates without any management and leadership skills are allowed to manage junior associates. And that creates a huge morale problem. Senior lawyers do not want to be bothered mentoring junior lawyers today. They're far too busy with trying to develop work. And honorable behavior is not always valued. Now remember the image of the senior lawyers hiding behind the pillars to avoid interaction with the new generation lawyers. The truth is that for many senior lawyers, looking at what they cannot relate to about millennial lawyers would open up uncomfortable conversations because they raised many of today's young lawyers, and now they don't know what to do with them. But if law firm leaders do not step up and embrace change, they will fail the profession. The very people who, as parents, so passionately protected the future generation from failure will, in the end, fail that generation, and they will fail themselves. Slide 14, please. To make the changes we need, law firm leaders must pay closer attention to the human side of practice, human capital. They must interact with young lawyers and be responsive to them. They must show interest in the careers of young lawyers. They must dignify the values of young lawyers and be open to new ideas and new ways of doing business. They must understand that these young people are used to teamwork. It's part of their experiences, and it's what they crave. And they must provide mentoring that gives hope to young lawyers and develop them into effective leaders. Slide 15, please. And law firm leaders also must put a high priority on lawyer well-being. They must recognize that millennial lawyers are suffering in the demanding and impersonal law firm cultures of today. And those experiences are leading to anxiety disorders and depression. That problem has been has been focused on by the American Bar Association lately and is a huge initiative. The bottom line is that law firm leaders must care about the young lives in their midst, or they're going to lose those young lives in their practices. Because if we know anything, we know one thing about millennials. They travel light. They are ready to walk unless we can show them something better. They are ready to leave huge holes in historical memory in law firms that cannot be filled by the small number of Gen X lawyers who preceded them and the even newer Generation Z lawyers who incidentally are coming along with the very same values that the millennials have. Slide 16, please. Remember the statistics about the millennial generation that I shared with you moments ago? Their numbers are huge, and their contacts among millennials in the C-suites of business also are huge because they all grew up together, they all went to school together, and they speak the same language. Baby boomer lawyers, on the other hand, are retiring in large numbers, and management cannot throw out the millennial lawyers who are the hope for positive succession plans and taking those firms into the future. So for this dilemma, we need a shared solution. A solution is going to keep millennial lawyers in practice, and now we've got to figure out how to do it. Slide 17, please. The good news is that some law firms today are grappling with the issues and attempting change that is responsive to millennial lawyers and their values. Those changes include creating models for early responsibilities as decision makers, increased interest in career paths and earlier promotion, team-oriented problem solving and entrepreneurship models, increased flexibility to accommodate the needs of families, more frequent feedback, increased pro bono commitments, and increased diversity and inclusion. Some firms also are encouraging retirement age lawyers to remain with the firm in young lawyer development roles. I have to tell you, I think this is a brilliant way to use senior talent to train junior lawyers and to, at the same time, be responsive to senior lawyers who are not ready for full retirement and want to continue to make a contribution to the profession in a firm where they have lived for some time. And we are hearing more and more about groundbreaking telecommunication or telecommuting programs, especially during COVID, and greater attention to parental leave and childcare programs. Slide 18, please. But having said all of that to you law firm leaders who I hope are listening, now I need to talk directly to you millennial lawyers because you are going to have to step up as well. This is my important message for you. You have chosen a demanding and competitive business, and you must be ready to accept the responsibilities of being a professional. You must stop complaining and work hard, and at the same time continue to advocate for more honorable and civil workplaces, flexible schedules, telecommuting opportunities, and work-life balance that will improve the profession for everyone. You must show respect to receive respect. You must insist on mentoring to develop your skills and have opportunities to demonstrate your talent. You must become less sensitive to criticism. You must overcome your need for attention and be realistic about the time constraints of others. You must get out of your comfort zones and take on challenges and risks to advance your teams and their careers. And you must understand that you do not have the answers, not all of the answers. And you must listen to the wisdom of those who have been in the trenches for more than a millennial lifetime. And you must have patience. I am sure most of you know by now, the profession of law is inherently deliberative and slow moving most of the time. It is no place for expectations of instant gratification like those that you grew up with. So you also have important work to do in solving the generation gap. And I encourage you to stick to your values and remember that you are a new generation with so much in common with the greatest generation that has been revered in our society and our profession for so many years. It is a position of strength for you, and I hope that you play it well. Slide 19, please. And that is a wrap, because these are brief webinars for busy lawyers, and I know how busy all of you are. And I want to thank you very much for your attention. If you need further guidance, I encourage you to read that book about millennial lawyers that I mentioned. It is short. I made it that way so that you might actually read it. My objective was to be able to read my book on a flight from my airport here at DC International, Reagan International in DC, to getting off that plane at O'Hare. And I think I achieved that. And for more on what the law profession needs today, I'd like you to take a look at my November column. I have a monthly column in the ABA Journal, and that monthly column for November is about ready to come out any day now. It is on the subject of decency in the law profession, and I think you're probably going to enjoy it. And now I will be happy to take any of your questions if there's time for that, Laura.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much for that terrific presentation, Susan.
Oh,
That
my
was
pleasure.
absolutely wonderful. That isn't something that I'd heard before, comparing the millennials' values to the greatest generation. But as you were talking about it, I could immediately see the parallels that you were saying with the values and how to live their life. That is absolutely wonderful. And it's nice how you also backed up all these concepts with facts.
And I will tell you, Laura, that in the book that I'm encouraging everyone to read, I have anecdotes in that book. They are all things that I observed as a child. And when my father died, it was a cathartic thing for me to sit down and say, okay, what did he teach me about being the lawyer I want to be? And all of those anecdotes are true. And so after those anecdotes that represent one of those values, then I have some challenge questions for the reader to see where they come down within that context.
That is wonderful. I'll start you off with a few questions, and I know too that certainly we want to respect your time, but if other people have questions as well, please add them to the chat as we go along. Have you seen any way in bar associations that they are able to help bridge the generation gap as well? Have you seen projects or mentoring programs that you thought really helped, attract some of the senior lawyers helping with the new junior lawyers, or any other ideas related to associations you thought could be a model?
Yes, absolutely. I have been a member of the DC Women's Bar Association for almost 50 years. Please don't repeat that to anyone. I know that, and I have participated in some of their programs, and I know those programs to be very, very effective. Now, one of the things that I hear from time to time and that disappoints me is I will say to some of the young lawyers that I counsel who are in big law, you need to join and become active in the young lawyers group within your local bar association. And their answer too often is, oh, no, nobody in my firm does that. We're big law, we're we're global, we're whatever. And we don't need those contacts to develop work. No, you need those contacts to develop lawyers. That's what you need. And that's what local bar associations do. So I would very much encourage you to do that. And, a lot of work is shared at bar associations because of conflict situations. And there's nothing that puts a spring in a young associate's step more than being able to walk into a partner and say, gee, I just got a referral on some work. That's what every young lawyer is craving.
That is very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Our next question is to build off what you had talked about as an idea for encouraging senior lawyers to stay on in law firms and to act more in lawyer development roles. Have you seen cases where this has worked? And could you tell some more details about how that program works and sort of as a pitch to law firm leaders that may be watching, why that is good for their firm all around?
Oh, I'd be delighted to answer that one. Yes, I have seen it at work. I've seen it at work in one of the biggest law firms in this nation, because I have a friend who was on the management committee of that law firm for years, and getting to the point where she was ready to retire. And in fact, they didn't want to see her retire. And so they put her in that position, and it has worked absolutely beautifully. The problem is that today we have all of these rules about retirement in law firms. So some law firms say, you got to go when you're 60, you got to go when you're 65, you got to go when you're 70, and the clock is ticking. And that, there are still many lawyers that are hitting their stride at that age, because they're just so full of information and wisdom, and they're not ready to go. So I have any number of friends who have retired, and they've started their own shops. They've started their own, soul practices from within their homes, and they're just not ready to give it up. So it works for the law firms because many of these lawyers do not want to give it up. Now, I don't want to leave you with the wrong impression. Not every lawyer is a good mentor or a good teacher, but some of them are. And those that want to stay, that aren't ready to walk out the door, you as law firm leaders today could probably get them real cheap as mentors, because they could stay on in an environment that continues to need their talent, and they can use it in a different way. I think that if you had somebody in that position who would come in and do meetings, gatherings with these young lawyers, even just once a month, and spend time with them, take a subject, take interrogatories, take preliminary motions practice, whatever it might be, deal making, and give them the benefit of all of these years of experience. Those associates would look so forward to that, and it would make them feel more like lawyers. I refer to this as the big lie of law school, and that is that you're going to graduate from law school and you're going to feel like a lawyer. That isn't the way it happens today. As I mentioned to you in my remarks, you feel like a law clerk, or you feel like some commodity on a shelf that if you don't work out, somebody else is just coming along. They want to feel valued. They want to feel like the lawyers that they desire to be, and to have somebody demonstrating that for them. I think it's just absolutely a win-win, and I hope I see more firms do it.
That is wonderful. Very, very helpful. Our last question here is, could you describe some of what you think would make for a good mentoring relationship in the generation gap. Like, what are some of the qualities that a mentor should bring to the table, and what are some qualities a mentee should bring in order to most effectively have this relationship built?
Well, I can answer that one as a lawyer, and I can answer it as a parent because it's pretty much the same thing. For the mentor, you have to spend time, invest time, and listen, listen, listen. And you have to understand that the millennials, some of you millennials listening to me today are just glib as can be, and you just have wonderful communication skills, but some of you do not. And that is for the reasons that I mentioned to you today. So the mentors have to understand that sometimes it takes a while for those mentees to get out what it is that's really on their minds. So the time has to be invested, and there has to be a trust relationship. And those mentees must be, they must be convinced that they can trust what they're telling you and that you're going to keep it to yourself. It's not going to be used against them. It's going to be used for them so that you can help them to address that issue, not necessarily the way they want it addressed, but the way you know as a seasoned and accomplished lawyer, it needs to be addressed. That's the investment in human capital that I would like to see leadership make. I have, one of my books is directly for law firm leaders. It deals with women lawyers, but it's about how law firm leaders should deal with women lawyers. And I can tell you that translates right over to millennial lawyers as well. And the mentees have to have patience. They have to then listen to what's being told to them. They have to stop acting like they know everything and use every bit of the information that they're being given and take it into their own personalities and their own characteristics, but to use it to become more effective in the work that they do. Now, I will tell you, I am not in favor of this thing that many law firms do where they match up mentor and mentee. You know, sometimes it's, oh, well, they both went to that school. Isn't that a perfect fit? No, it's not a perfect fit unless it's a perfect fit for the individuals themselves. So I like to see this as more of an organic process where you don't match them up day one when the young lawyer hits the law firm corridor. You give it some time to develop. You encourage your senior lawyers to get out from behind those pillars in the hotel lobby and really engage with these young people so that they know which ones they think they can be the most effective with. And the mentees get a feel for that as well. And then you have, I hope that somebody's got a young lawyer committee within their law firms or a mentorship committee or whatever it is. And that's where those discussions need to take place. Who are you comfortable with? Who do you trust? Who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to help develop your career?
That is helpful. Would you also say that some of the best mentors are maybe people you wouldn't initially anticipate? Like you said that just having commonality of going to the same school may not be a direct link so much as when people come together. Do you think a common interest, or do you see similar personality types as being helpful?
Yes, I think that that is very helpful, but that's why you have to get the young lawyers and the more seasoned lawyers who will become the mentors into social settings so that they can have conversations that have nothing to do with the law, so that they can get to know a little bit about each other. And having said that, I want to tell you, young lawyers, you can't skip those social settings. You can't skip those in order to bill more hours. You've got to go there and you've got to interact with those people. I tell my own kids, and I tell the young lawyers who I counsel, every time I go in to give a speech to a large bar association or a law firm where I haven't been before, I mean, I give speeches all over this country, and I walk into a huge group of people and I don't know anybody in that group. I have to walk up and do a cold call on people standing together in a group chatting. I have to go up there and say, hi, my name is Susan Blakely. I'd love to meet you and have you tell me what brought you here today. That's not easy to do, and I'm not acting like it is, but you got to do it. You've got to do it enough times to become comfortable with it and start those conversations. And it should be easier to do that within your own law firm than it is in a larger group where you are really much more anonymous. So I wish you all well, and I know it's not easy, but I also know you can do it.
That is wonderful advice. Thank you so much. We just had another question come in, if you have a few more minutes.
Yes, I do.
So this is a great question. This person asks, are there any recommendations for socializing while working remotely due to COVID-19 and beyond?
Well, I believe that many law firms are doing this. I hope they are, at least. I have certainly read about a number that are. They're doing some social hours. You know, they're getting people together. It's not much different than I'm getting together with my girlfriends at cocktail hour. And because I don't go many places. We have a new baby in our family. And if I want to see the new baby, I better isolate most of the time. So I really, really feel the pain of all of you who are isolating. But I encourage law firms to do these kinds of social hours, and I encourage every one of you lawyers to participate in them. They're extremely important because this isolation is really leading to problems such as I discussed with you in my remarks. So, you know, people can jump on and off these calls. I'm a member of a board of directors. I mean, we even jump on and off board meetings if we have to. But, you know, this can all be accomplished well in remotely and virtually, but it takes people to participate.
That is very, very helpful. And you're right, participation from all sides, being involved. And although remotely is hard, it sounds like you still can participate in the social hours at bar associations, young lawyer divisions, and other things else. That's wonderful. We also had a follow-up. You mentioned about there's some similarity between good approaches for female lawyers and then also millennial lawyers. Wondered if you would touch a little bit more on that.
Well, the similarity that I was referring to is my 3-book series for young women lawyers. What women need to know about a career in the law, the new balance that's the first one. The new balance for young women lawyers is the second one, and the third one was for law firm leaders and how to handle these things. Is the crossover that I was referring to is that I write for young lawyers, young women lawyers, and now for all young lawyers in the millennial category. And so the advice is not too much different than what you would give for a millennial than what you would give for a young woman lawyer, with this one exception. Many of the millennial lawyers, the females, are also the primary caretakers of children at home. And that is not true of most of you young millennial male lawyers. And those issues of the caretaking and how to handle the challenges of not only the caretaking, but the gender biases that women are experiencing in the law are particularly challenging. So I write a lot about those. I have counseled young millennial male lawyers, however, who have experienced their own gender biases, because some of the women in practice, the senior women, are not very good mentors to some of these young people. And I write about that quite a bit on my blogs. You can go on my website and you see that I blog every week about important subjects. And I certainly have blogged about senior women not being willing to mentor, particularly junior women, because these senior women feel like they paid a much higher price than the young women are paying to advance in these law firms. But I always quote former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, who said, "There is a place reserved in hell for women who don't help other women."
That is very helpful. Just to follow up to that, if you had time, it sounds like, looks like we have several millennials who are in the audience. Do you have ideas on how they can help contribute positively to changing law firm culture? Or is this something that you think really the culture starts from the top down and will be more of a turning point, as you said, within the next 10 years as it goes 75% to millennial lawyers in the workforce? Is there anything that they can do now if their workforce does not go with the values that you were talking about of teamwork, of accessibility, of trust, collaboration, that they can do to try to encourage those values?
Yes, it begins with the ask. You have to ask. You have to plant those seeds. You're not going to be successful on the first ask. Most people are not. But you've got to stick with it. And you've got to make your case. That's what I was trying to share with you today, is you've got to make your case for why those values that are so important to you are going to improve the law firm as well. In making your case, you're also making it obvious that you are the future leaders. You know, these succession plans are going to fail if these law firms do not invest in their young lawyers, and they know it. They absolutely know it. That's why they asked me to come in and speak to them. And I've been in large law firms where I've been asked to speak to the management committee, and I've been asked to speak to the women's committee, and I've been asked to speak to the compensation committees, because they understand that you are their future. So ask politely, always politely and with respect, but ask and continue to ask. You can share information. If you come across a good article of some kind, or a blog or something like that, take a look at that article on decency in the ABA journal that's going to come out any day now that I've written, because that's a pretty strong article about what's happening in our profession today and the values that we need to get back to being the keystones of the work that we do.
That is a critical point. We just had a person chime in as well, which is right along what you were saying, with that they were noting it helps to ask nicely and not with a sense of entitlement, which goes along right with what you were saying with to ask repeatedly, to have with respect, that there may be some patience involved, and above all, some decency, and that civility in the workplace, it sounds like, is really foundational.
Oh, there's no question about that. Attitude is a very bad thing to display. And if you can get beyond that and substitute, attitude is still the way you feel, but we don't have to share all of our feelings with everybody. You can have those feelings, but you have to remember that you're trying to be a great communicator. That's something that every lawyer needs to be. It doesn't matter whether you're in the courtroom, communicating with the judge, with opposing counsel. It doesn't matter if you're at the table wrapping out a deal, trying to bring people to the middle, to compromise positions. You have to be a great communicator. So this is a wonderful place for you to start. Put the attitude on the back shelf. Think about what your objective is. Who are you trying to move where? And then you will be the effective communicator that you want to be, and just keep coming back to it. You can come back to it from a number of different directions. I've been asked that so many times. Oh, I went in and I suggested this to my supervising lawyer and he or she was not buying it. What am I going to do now? My answer is go back, regroup, come back to it in a little bit different way. You can even try to make it their idea if you're really clever. And that's what you have to continue to do, because your values are firm. If I haven't demonstrated that to you in the remarks I've made to you already, then I have failed, because your values are very, very firm. They are historically proven, and they are much more about today than the traditional values, the way that law firms have been operating in, I would say, the last 25 years, at least, in a toxic way. So I wrote an article in Corporate Counsel. You can probably find it someplace. It was on work-life balance, but what I really am so glad that I said back in 2016 was I called out the greed in law firms, the greed and the power-hungry values that were destroying what our profession is really all about. And I actually referenced that article in the ABA article on decency that I've got coming out, because I think it is so critically important.
Those are very critical components, and you are such a clear communicator yourself, and which has really been a wonderful model for all of us to see and learn from today. This has been absolutely extraordinary. Pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much, Susan Smith-Blakely, for sharing your time and advice for us. This has been absolutely wonderful, and also for engaging so well with the Q&A. You give outstanding advice for all parties to think about.
Thank you, Laura. By the way, do you have slide 20 up there?
Yes, we do. It's on it right now.
Because that shows people how they can get in touch with me, and I'm always open to anybody contacting me with a question or whatever that might be. It's a great way for me to know what all of you are thinking, what's important to you, so that I can improve my messages.
That is
Thank you very much. And I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving, but a very safe Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. For all of the attendees, if you happen to miss the beginning of this, we will provide a recording and slides on a website at masslowmap.org. Thank you again for tuning in. Please mark your calendars for the next webinars for busy lawyers, which will be on December 2nd, another Wednesday, also at noontime. And we'll have Charity Anastasio talking about tips for being a pro Zoomer. So Susan Blakely-Smith, thank you so much for your wonderful insights. We'll definitely look out for your articles, your books, and that coming one you said in the November ABA journal. And then also thank you so much for sharing your time, and as well for all of you tuning in with us today. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it, and we hope you all have a terrific afternoon. Thank you very, very much. This has been an outstanding presentation.
Thank you.